Oh yeah, someone said TJ Kirk made a video about my drug takes. I saw it mentioned on my subreddit, and people were going, yeah, I agree with TJ Kirk, and I genuinely don't remember what my drug takes are, apart from me saying that a lot of weed addicts are coping. Bro, offline chat argued about weed for over 2 hours. You know, the statement weed users overreact when told that they're addicts is such a great statement because it proves itself right if you say it around weed addicts, you know? It's fantastic. It's undefeatable because they just immediately leap to prove you right. Which is, I appreciate. Fine, I'll see a bit of it. I really don't have the stomach for this beefing stuff, you know?
Vaush argues with chat about weed addiction and bans angry chatter. Well, before we start, I should probably, once again, this is all legal medicinal herbs that are, you know.
It is impossible for me to describe how little I trust people who habitually use drugs. Vaush, it feels bad when you say that because I'm legit trying to get off drugs. Yeah, so wouldn't that mean that you're Wait, why? Wait, why? Wouldn't it be the opposite? Wouldn't you feel bad about that if you were trying to get on drugs and I was condemning drug use?
Yes. Every day.
Sure. Yeah, that's true. It's like, yeah, more motivation, you know? Wait, why? Wouldn't it be the opposite? Wouldn't you feel bad about that if you were trying to get on drugs and I was condemning drug use? That's good. I thought you smoked in the bank. No, I never smoke. I drink sometimes, and I have a lot of coffee. Vaush.
His drugs are fine, though.
True.
I mean, Americans have, by and large, kidded themselves that caffeine is not a drug. I don't know where this notion came from that caffeine isn't a drug. I don't know why we think it's all right to tell kids not to do drugs, but then give them caffeine. I don't know why it's treated so much less seriously than every other drug in existence.
Well, in fairness, like caffeine is a drug, but in fairness, like obviously caffeine is a much less, like the effects that it has on you are going to be a lot less impactful and potentially dangerous. Obviously, there's stuff like anxiety or higher heart rate or blood pressure. I mean, those are issues to be sure. But like if you're comparing it to like even marijuana or alcohol, we were significantly more influential on your, you know, mind state. But I do agree though. We put caffeine in too much stuff. You know, I think here's my take. I think that caffeine should only be present in coffee or tea because it's like its own separate little thing. Putting caffeine into everything feels kind of like putting alcohol into everything, where it's just like you want to like go to the store and like buy like, oh, here I want like a hot dog that I see like rolling on a bar at the 7-Eleven, like under the heat lamp, and it's like, oh yeah, that's a liquor dog actually. Like the interior is just full of like whiskey. Why? So what? People do overconsume caffeine, you know? Oh yeah, for sure, Flavier. Yeah. In terms of like normalized drugs, weren't we? What was the Yemeni drug? The one where the Timothy Chalamet said that he was using or whatever? Khat? Here we go. Khat contains the alkaloid cathinone, a stimulant which causes greater sociability, excitement, loss of appetite, and mild euphoria. Fuck yeah. Among habits, cat chewing is historical relevance. Coca bean leaves and some of those. They classify khat as a drug of abuse that can produce psychological dependence. Okay, so maybe it's more, it's less like caffeine, because I don't think they call it that, but that might also be a colonial thing where it's like, oh yeah, you know, North Africans caffeine is super bad. Oh, okay, I see. Oh, sorry, this is conservation status, not like status of abuse or whatever. Okay, cool. Now I want to try it. It's more like Adderall. Now I really want to try it. Man, if this is why we can't defeat the Houthis, you know, because they're all like methed up all the time on their goddamn khat. People get psychologically addicted to caffeine, though, don't they? Well, in fact, you can get psychologically addicted to anything at all. There's a difference between psychological addiction and physiological addiction. There are some chemicals that are that will literally like rewire the brain to hurt you if you stop using them. You can get physiologically addicted to caffeine. I think you can't get physiologically addicted to weed. You can, of course, to alcohol, massively to alcohol. I mean, like, if you're an alcoholic, going cold turkey can sometimes literally kill you. So you have to be careful with that. There are some things where going cold turkey can kill you, but you can get psychologically addicted to anything. This is one of the things that makes marijuana deceptively safe, where you can't get physiologically addicted to it. Yeah, sorry, chemical dependency and psychological dependency. Thank you, Flavia. You can't get chemically dependent on weed, but you can get very psychologically dependent on it. And a lot of people will say, "Oh, well, I can't get addicted to it because it's not a chemically dependent substance." You know, it was yeah. So it's a whole thing.
But here's yet another example of that. Here's a guy that just told you that he doesn't trust any drug user. Anybody who
well, no, didn't I say habitual drug user?
Who habitually
Vaush.
His drugs are fine though.
Wait, why? It's impossible for me to describe how little I trust people who habitually use drugs. Yeah, it's different.
The next breath. By the way, I'm a habitual caffeine user. Oh, okay. Well, that one's different though. We've decided as a society that one's different. Provide me the logic for why it's different. Can't do it. But
you could. Caffeine is different to other. I mean, that there is a difference between the drugs, right? And now, if I was a habitual alcohol user, if I was an alcoholic, then I think you could make the exact. Well, wait. First of all, at no point did I even say that like he's inferring my statements here. Like I at no point did I say that like you can't be addicted to caffeine or to alcohol or whatever. But there are different drugs, different effects, right? Drug is a pretty big umbrella term. When you say habitually use, you mean being used for like recreational purposes? Well, I think I explained it more in like the full segment or something. I don't know what's exactly being clipped here, but what I mean is like dependency, essentially. There are people who smoke a ton of weed or do a bunch of alcohol or whatever else. And like, yeah, I think that causes like real issues, not just in terms of relating to them or whatever, but trustworthiness is one of the first thing to go out the door for people who use a lot of drugs. Like it literally is. Trustworthiness, like reliability is it's the essence of neurotypicality, essentially. You need to have your shit locked on. You've got to have your feet firmly planted to be like a trustworthy, reliable person. Any direction you can take, any like drug, anything that deviates from your like resting mental state. I think that for the most part that's a detriment. There are exceptions, of course, right? Like Adderall can literally help you focus and make you more dependable. So stuff like that. But I feel like a lot of people, when I say stuff like that, given how broad the term drug is, a lot of people will hear it and go like, but I found this one like little like I've interpreted your statement in this way, but I found a counterexample in this way, you know? When like I feel like everybody should understand what I mean and what I'm saying when I say this, I guess. What about medical weed? I mean, medical weed is weed. If you use it so much that it's like habitual use or you're dependent on it, then like, yeah, it's weed. I think untrustworthy is a loaded term, but yeah, it is a loaded term. I don't have an issue with clarification or whatever, but I don't know. It's because people get defensive, so they assume that I mean the worst thing or whatever. I just think it's too much of an overgeneralization. Well, yeah, of course. That's why you need to like qualify statements like that. But I can't make every statement off the get-go with full qualification because it literally takes time to qualify statements. Like that's literally like there's a limited amount of information I can deliver verbally in a set amount of time. The idea that addicts are untrustworthy is a myth that reverses cause and effect. People who are untrustworthy are more likely to have issues with substance abuse. Hard disagree. No, I don't think that drug addicts are just naturally untrustworthy people who fall into it because they were already predisposed to being weak. I disagree strongly. I think that you can be a good upstanding person or you can be kind of a degenerate, you know, whichever. But if you get into drug use for whatever reason, like, yeah, drugs literally impair brain functionality. That's just kind of how it is. Addiction as a medical term requires negative consequences, so most people aren't addicted to coffee, they're only dependent on it. That's true, technically, yeah. An addiction requires like a negative effect in your life. People get addicted to drugs because of something in their life. I mean, people get addicted to drugs for lots of different reasons. I don't want to be essentialist about the personalities of drug users. I've known people who have had substance dependency issues. I'm not making the argument it makes you like an innately bad person, but like obviously, yes, like if you are high or drunk or whatever else all the time, it's obviously going to impede your reliability in a day-to-day sense. Vaush is coping hard right now. Caffeine and weed have the same addiction rate. What? What are you talking about? What is anyone talking about? Again, it's impossible to talk about this because you can pick out in the chat the people who smoke like 6 bowls a day, and are just desperately looking for any jab they can get in, you know, because they're so practiced from the shower arguments they've had against their parents. and they're like ready to take it out on me, the old fuddy-duddy, 29-year-old Californian who went to university in Humboldt County. Like, ah, man, I'm ready to go to battle with this guy.
It's different. Trust us.
Shaming people doesn't help them get off. If I wanted them to get off, I would jerk them off. Okay. If I wanted to make broad.
Oh, okay, well, we could talk about that in the DMs sometime, Vaush. Hey, if you like this clip, you might like the full stream, which I do every.
It's just the beginning. Oh, I get it.
Sunday,
it's the okay,
more or less, over on the Pessimist Productions Patreon, link down below. Thank you kindly.
I should do statements saying that I don't trust habitual drug users. I would make broad statements saying that I don't trust habitual drug users. I'm not trying to help anyone get off. I'm not talking to a person.
I mean, I hate this approach where all drugs are now being treated as though they're 100% equivalent to one another.
I don't do that. I'm just making a broad statement. I feel, man, you can't say shit as a public figure. I have to say, this is like when I said like, yeah, I don't like Italian food as much, and then it's like it's open season, dude. Everyone's running out there to the races. The hunters are putting on their reflective vests and sprinting into the forest with rifles loaded. But frankly, if I took the effort to hyper qualify every single statement I ever made just so people don't act weirdly defensive about them, I would never have any fun, and every stream would take forever. So I can't do that.
Like, there's no qualitative difference. It's just drugs. Like, Vaush basically right here has turned into a 1980s anti-drug PSA.
This feels like an incredible reach. Also, wait, I literally just said I use alcohol and caffeine. Why would but he was the one who just said that only social differences are why we treat caffeine differently to like weed or whatever. Wouldn't he be the one equating?
Where all drugs are just being treated as one blanket thing, and we're going to ignore any sort of pharmacological differences that might exist between them.
I don't think
because that's not what this is about.
I don't think I did this.
This is about Vaush feeling superior because his drug is okay.
Man, this is what I mean about the projecting. I didn't say this. It's like a lot of moralizing. Vaush, correct that your framing makes it sound like you view all drugs the same. No, I genuinely think you're acting in bad faith if you interpret that from what I've said. How could you possibly hear what I said and think that I think that caffeine, weed, alcohol, and methamphetamines are the same? Like, nothing I've said even remotely implies that, I don't think that's the case. I think you have to read in to what I've said pretty disingenuously to come away with that. You do overstate the unreliability of stoners, but you're allowed to not like all dates. But I mean, look, stoners are unreliable. they just are. I'm sorry. Like, that's not a moral judgment, but like, obviously, yeah, if you're high all the time. Explain what about weed overuse is bad, please. The term overuse implies that it's negative because it says overuse, because it's over the use. As far as I understand it, you say if you have a dependency, you should critically examine that. Of course, but like, why are people being so analytical in chat? I don't know. I feel like all my statements here are pretty straightforward. Like, I say, yeah, stoners are unreliable, and there are people in chat being like, well, not every stoner. No shit, dude. Like, imagine if I said, yeah, soul food makes you feel really like heavy and sleepy after, and someone was like, no, I had a soul food meal and I felt fine after. Like, what do you? Can you make an effort to seek into the statement that I am making, like, the fundamental truth, rather than like picking at, because I will respond like, yeah, obviously not every stoner is unreliable. That's mathematically improbable. Like, we're talking about general tendencies. Or I have to qualify everything. Like, in my experience, a use of marijuana which goes beyond, like I have to like quantify, like, how many times a day, Vaush, do you mean by overuse? Vaush, it's nuance, but you being righteously zealotry and mental. When am I being zealous here? It comes as patronizing at best, just saying I'm an ex-addict. I'm not saying anything, Sally. You're so defensive. I'm not saying anything. I'm not saying anything. What am I saying? Well, really, though, why? I mean, if you're an ex-addict, I'm glad you're no longer suffering from the addiction. That's great. I just don't think I would come off as particularly Puritan on this at all. It's literally just the confident tone. People think it's self-righteous. Yeah.
His caffeine addiction, there's no problem there. That's a nice little stimulant. That
When, first of all, when did I say that? Second of all, when did I say caffeine addiction? I just said I use caffeine.
keeps him going.
Directly. I'm just saying that I don't. Drugs, the thing that impede the functioning of your brain. Why are you can say anything to this chat. I swear. Oh my.
Things that impede the functioning of your brain. Well, I mean, once again, we got to talk about the drug. I mean, one of the drugs you said you do engage in is alcohol. I would say that on a list of drugs that impede the functioning of the brain, alcohol's got to be close to the tippy top.
Yeah. Yes. This is the I run into this a lot where people assume I have positions I don't have, and then when I don't have those positions, I get accused of being a hypocrite because there's an inconsistency between the positions I have and the positions I don't have.
Right? Now, he didn't say he's a habitual alcohol user. He says he gets drunk once.
Even if I was a habitual alcoholic, even if I was an alcoholic, what would that have to do with the statement? I never said, at no point did I say to chat, listen up, chat, as somebody with no chemical substance use addiction or whatever, here's my opinion. I never said that. It's not relevant to anything I said.
In a while. And I'm sure, he would, obviously point out that caveat. But as far as drugs that...
Where does this shit come from? From his chat, he's literally admitted to taking 4 Adderall at a time. What does that mean? Adderall is it's a prescription drug. The capsules have different amounts of milligrams of Adderall in that. What is 4 Adderall? 4 5 milligram? 4 10 milligram? What does that even mean?
Inhibit your reasoning faculties. That one's close to the tippy top of the list. There's plenty of drugs that enhance.
So do you think all dependency is bad? Is caffeine I mean, obviously, like this, an ideal superhuman Ubermensch would be dependent on literally nothing because they would simply wake up and they would like think into existence their breakfast and then they wouldn't eat it because they're not dependent on food or water. Like, sure, I guess, in like a broad sense, like the concept of dependency, unless you're talking about romantic dependency, I guess, because then there's like yeah, sure. Maybe, sure. I don't think caffeine dependency is as bad as weed dependency, but it really depends on what you mean, because again, like when I say that, people are going to think like in one, because what people are going to compare in their heads, on one hand, it's going to be like somebody who has 20 cups of coffee a day and has a heart attack the next day versus somebody who's like smoked weed once, I think that if we're gonna like really quantify it, a person who drinks 2 to 3 cups of coffee a day is probably suffering less repercussions to their drug use than a person who smokes like 2 to 3 bowls of weed a day, right? Like, is that agreeable, right? Because like a cup of coffee usually gives you like a little perky buzz, and a whole bowl of weed usually, depending on your level of tolerance, can like knock your shit out. Though of course you get more resistant to it the more you use it. So honestly, I disagree. Okay. All right. Vaush, no lol. Coffee dependency will give you headaches once you stop doing it every day. Weed, like you said, depending on tolerance, can just mellow you out. Yeah, but the difference is when you're high on weed, you can't do as many things as you can normally. Whereas drinking a cup of coffee usually just at most makes a person feel slightly more energetic, and they can do the same amount of things that they could normally. Untrue, like what? Fuck me, dude. This is like, okay, just to let you guys know, you are literally doing the thing alcoholics do when they pretend they're just as competent and capable when they're drunk. Literally like, fuck off, okay? Seriously, I take crazy pills every time this comes up. Like, no, being high doesn't inhibit your, shut the fuck up. Seriously, I don't want to hear it, okay? You guys make me worry. Like, how many people in my generation or the generations adjacent to me, like, you all driving high? Like, I don't want to hear it, okay? When you're high, you're high. That's why you smoke. You smoke to make yourself high. Being high means you can do fewer things. You're not more creative when you're high. You're not more whatever, okay? That's total bullshit. You're more relaxed, I guess, if you don't get anxiety from getting high like I do. And you enjoy music more and food more. That was the only reason I ever smoked, by the way. Back when I could smoke before the anxiety issue kicked in, I would usually do it because Vermin would make this gigantic stack of cheese and refried bean quesadillas, and I would just get high, which took no weed whatsoever. Literally like one single, like what would it be called from a bong? Toke? It's not a toke from a bong. That's from a joint. Like inhale, puff, sure, a puff, yeah. One, turn the lighter on, slurp the rip. Thank you. That hit rip. Thank you. Those work. Thank you. Yeah, one of those would usually be enough to fuck me up because I've always had pretty low weed tolerance, and now of course I have low alcohol tolerance as well. And then I would just have then I'd have the quesadillas. I remember fondly the first time that I was ever high because I was given an edible. This is how many people's first time getting high is. I hadn't gotten high from attempts to smoke weed before because it just would not make me high no matter how much I did it. Probably because I was smoking it incorrectly. And I took an edible and it fucked me up so bad that I was still blazed out of my skull while doing like a charity function at a church the next day. I was going with friends. They were doing some kind of like youth outreach big dinner. There were like 40 people in the church with the like benches out, and I was sitting at one end of it just like smiling, like staring directly forward, and my friends were like bodyguarding for me because if anyone came up to me to ask me a question or like say, oh hey, I remember you from class or whatever, they'd be like, oh hey, good to see you, 1 second, he's got heg or whatever. So I appreciate my friends looking out for me in those dire times. Pancakes were great. You literally, like, these edibles ain't shit. Yeah. I swear these people not only want to take drugs, they also want to feel good about it and get a pat in the back. It's so annoying. I just want people to accept, because like, again, I don't have an issue with a person being drunk. The thing that makes people who are drunk insufferable is when they start acting like they don't know they're drunk. Drunk people know that they're drunk. And drunk people know somewhere in the back or front of their mind that they are at a higher risk for being an annoying piece of shit. Usually, they should, at the very least. And the worst drunks are the people who overcompensate, you know? The kinds who lean in on you, who are overly familiar, who stumble over you, who, like, knock your drinks over, and they're like, oh, sorry, that my bad. And they try to, like, charisma their way through everything, but they can't because they're too drunk to understand how they sound. This is a detestable character archetype, you know? This is what I'm seeing in some of the weed users in chat. If you could just accept, yes, being high makes you high, you've got it, you're fine. No condemnation for me. Just, you know, I wouldn't want to go to a bar with somebody who did that too. I remember really upsetting a friend once when I was acting that way while drunk. This was like a long time, like 8 years ago or something. And since then, I basically just stopped. I tried to give him like a, oh, you're not mad at me, haha, hug. But I like stumbled and basically like hit him against a wall, like with my shoulder against him. And I'm much larger than he is, so it kind of hurt him a lot. And after that, I felt really bad. And I just stopped doing that. It was a skill issue, and I willed myself into not acting like that while drunk anymore. So Vaush's hatred of drug use is a trauma response goal. No, I'm delightful when I'm drunk, thank you. Being high helps with focus and helps you get work done, Vaush, saying it's the same as alcohol as cope. You capitalize every letter that you type, okay? Why should I trust you? No, I'm sorry. You're coping. I don't care. I'm not going to argue with you on this. Like, what am I even going to argue? How do we test that, you know? Do you drive better drunk? Nobody does. Nobody does. And nobody drives better high. Why do stoners think you can drive while high? What made them think that? You realize you're not fit for the road just because you're driving at 6 miles per hour on residential streets and avoiding other cars in the opposite lane with a 10-foot berth, right? You realize being careful doesn't necessarily mean you should be driving. Vaush, the only person I know who says I do my work better high only said that because they're addicted. That is like a big addict statement. Yeah, you need weed to do like your work, you know? Like, I don't know. That to me is like, because that's like the end stage of the insufferable and genuinely quite sad weed addict, when like you can't do anything high anymore. Like, why fall asleep sober when you can fall asleep high? Why have a meal sober when you can have a meal high? Why do anything sober when you can be high? And at that point, like the dependency is pretty crazy. It's past the point of alcoholism to a large extent, at least in terms of like proportion of your life taken up by inebriation. Because with some exceptions, like very rarely, I guess, like if you have a job or whatever, I feel like it's pretty difficult to be drunk all the time. But a lot of people are like high all the time. I guess there are people who are drunk all the time. Maybe in like Alaska or something. You'd have to hide it in a different way. Also, people can usually smell alcohol in your breath, whereas with weed, you can cover up the smell with the smell. Irrelevant. Vaush, a lot of artists have made amazing shit while on drugs. Snoop Dogg, come on, man. Your boy Combing, come on. Cope. Like, literally, like, first of all, people have made good stuff while on meth or drunk. Like, what does that have to do with anything? What does that have to do with anything we're talking about, you know? Also, willing to bet, for the big creatives who are known for substance abuse, a lot of the work is done without the involvement of drugs. People like to overplay the influence of stuff like LSD or whatever, with like, oh, the Beatles did this or that. But in reality, the actual like bit by bit process of getting good at any talent, like whether that be singing or guitar or songwriting or whatever else, a lot of that takes a lot of thought and going over. I think that people really idealize the image of like a creative who's just high out their mind all the time, and they're just like, whoa, and they're doing it all as like a creative masterpiece. But that's just generally not how it works, you know? There's, no matter what profession you're in, creative work is usually a process of discipline, talent, hard work, and, you know, consistency, not just like a flourish of drunken nonsense that turns out amazing. Harry Dubois was one of the greatest cops ever. He was high all the time. Not in my playthrough. What's wrong with you? Vaush again refusing to admit this live stream was on caffeine. Why are you... I can't even tell how much of it is a bit anymore. I don't even know. This subject really does attract a truly extra... Wait, no, you're not doing a bit. Hold on, wait. We're looking at this person's chat messages before I inevitably ban them. Vaush is hard coping right now. Caffeine and weed have the same addiction rate. Vaush, facts don't care about your feelings. CDC.gov, marijuana health effects, addiction.html. Here's another article. Vaush keeps moving the goalpost. He first claimed caffeine is different from weed. He understood the addiction rate is the same. Now he's talking about how insufferable high people are. Vaush again refusing to admit that his live stream has caffeine. Bro, you are an addict. Only an addict would be this insistent on misinterpreting what I say on a live stream to defend their chosen drug. You haven't chatted in 2 years and you come in here getting angry about this. Get help. Unironically, I'm not joking. I'll give you a month with which to improve your life. Good luck. What if the detox kills him? You're right, with how much weed that guy smokes. Admitting the occasional use of drugs can give you a creative boost isn't the same as being Charles Bukowski, Vaush. I don't even know what position I'm meant to defend in response to that. I don't even know what's being argued about anymore. Hey, those are supposed to wake you the f*** up, Tempest. I don't know. Hold on. Vaush wants this guy to get off drugs, but if Vaush got off water, he'd be dead within a week. Yeah, water cells be like, okay, guys, just one more drink. I can go a while without it. I just... Oh, that's good. Yeah. So, what was I saying? Yeah. Good hit, bro.
Your brain's functions. Look at any sort of pharmacological study of LSD, mushrooms, hallucinogens in general. That broadens your mind in many ways.
First of all, being high on shrooms and the other stuff or whatever, it definitely can have like an interesting and expansive psychological effect, but it also does impede you from doing stuff. I don't think that's really a thing. How many people are like day to day using shroom? I guess that's possible. I just don't really hear of it. I don't think those drugs have the same effect on the electrochemistry. Yeah, I know about the microdosing thing, but I mean to the point where they're like always tripping, like fully doing it. Like they're doing the shroom tea, banana, peanut butter sandwich thing like all the time. Or I don't know how much of a thing that is. I don't usually think of that when I say habitual drug use. You know, I don't really, those aren't really drugs that I think about. Isn't it dangerous? I mean, probably, I don't know. But like, obviously being high on shrooms or LSD or whatever, like that can expand your thinking in some respects, but it does also limit your ability to do other stuff, obviously, right? Like it's not purely an upgrade. There's kind of a trade-off there. I hate this. I've done psychedelics, so my mind has been expanded, unlike the poor ignorant fools who refuse to try them. Yeah, yeah. Those things can be so up in the air. I don't even want to... I'm kind of scared of shrooms because I have heard stories of people sort of negatively rearranging their brain chemistry. You know, it's kind of, it's like Necronomicon shit, forbidden knowledge. If you have an understanding that just makes you a less happy person, but a lot of people end up being a more happy person, or they say they microdose and it makes them like. I think there's some research on depression being treatable to an extent with it. I'm not really sure. Anyway, it's not really what I think about when I'm talking about habitual drug use. You know, I agree. Substance soda, yeah. I tried shrooms and made my anxiety worse. I'm really sorry to hear that, Jose Soto. You take lithium, Vaush, it can kill you. Do not combine lithium with psychedelics ever. So what you're saying is it'd be cool and dangerous for me to try it then. Yeah, what else is there to do, a Radical Dino?
You can look up at a popcorn ceiling and see an amazingly intricate Renaissance-style painting in full, gorgeous detail. On LSD. I know.
I don't think this has anything to do with brain functionality. I just, like, that's just, you know. But you have to be sober to actually paint the Sistine Chapel on the ceiling.
Because I've experienced that. Now, probably wouldn't be the best drug to do my taxes on, but in terms of my visual imagination, my mind has been gigantically and enormously expanded. One of the reasons
I don't really think that's mind expansion. Isn't that just hallucination? I don't know. Yeah, whatever. It's not really relevant to what I'm saying.
that mushrooms have been posited as a potential drug to treat depression is that it gets rid of old neural connections and forms new ones. So the very connectivity of your brain begins to change. Now that's already something that kind of happens as a natural process, but a lot of your engrams and your ingrained behaviors are more capable of being changed when you're on mushrooms than they are when you're not.
Like a neuroplasticity thing, right? Like the way the connections in your mind open up means that you can have more impactful. I think this is like a sensory thing. Like you can have more impactful thoughts because you're taking advantage of a temporary period of increased neuroplasticity, I think. Yeah, it's complicated. I'm sure the research on all this is like insanely, like very, very complicated. So I mean, I don't know enough to really.
Now, is that a good thing for every single scenario? Probably not. Probably not a good idea to go to the bank and do some things with your accounts at that point.
Why not?
Better drug for that would be caffeine or some other stimulant, Adderall maybe. Things like that could help you in that scenario. Those are the helpful drugs for that task. But if you're going to, I don't know, create a piece of visual art, something like a little bit of mushrooms might help. If you're going to do something like go to a therapy session and try to overcome your depression, something like mushrooms might help. So this is just a very simplistic way of looking at drugs from a guy that's always chastising people about not bringing any nuance to their arguments. It seems like nuance is always weaponized with Vaush, isn't it?
I don't even know what this is about. Also, please don't go to your therapy appointments having already taken shrooms. You will not have a productive session. That would be very disrespectful to your therapist. Please don't do that. I don't like the framing of different drugs as being like the RPG buffs that you apply in different situations. I think that we should strive to be healthy and happy, coherent, and well put together with sort of minimal chemical rebalancing. I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with using drugs as long as they don't have negative effects in your life. But I guess I kind of, I feel like sometimes an over-reliance on the use of drugs as a way of supplementing your abilities in certain situations can prevent you from working to better yourself as you would be sober in those situations. A good example is people who can only be sociable at parties while drunk. There's nothing wrong with getting drunk at a party and being sociable while drunk at a party. There's nothing fundamentally wrong about that. But if a person has anxious, if a person just can't do it and they just keep relying on alcohol to loosen up the social divide, I think that's kind of sad, right? Because they're denying themselves the opportunity to improve their sociability there. They're denying themselves the ability. They're using it as a crutch, essentially, right?
When you say something he doesn't agree with, he's got a mountain of nuance. When he says something disagreeable, the nuance well done run dry.
From you,
Wouldn't you know it? Now, we're only 48 seconds in. I might be being unfair here. He might be willing to engage with some of the nuance in this argument, so let's see.
My God, dude, literally anything. Hey, Chad, I've got a banger of a hot take here. Don't you think drugs impede reasoning somewhat?
Some do, some don't. Don't treat drugs like a monolithic thing.
Do I have to list all the ones I have in mind? Like marijuana, alcohol, methamphetamine. Do I have to run the list? Come on.
I don't know about that one, Vaush. I feel like that might be problematic. I feel like that might be ableist. I feel like that might be a little bit retarded. Is it though, Chad? Is that?
Yes. Yes, it actually is.
Is that the thing that I said? Is it retarded? So that's why you hate musicians? Unironically. Weren't you high when debating someone back in 2019?
Unironically hates musicians, huh? I mean, I'm pretty...
The knowledge that musicians tend to be interpersonally insufferable is not particular to me. It's well known. That's just a known character trait.
Sure that his life has been enhanced through music. Even if Vaush is not the kind of guy that will put on a record or something or turn on Spotify, I guarantee plenty of the anime that he has watched has been enhanced by music.
What?
Those musicians,
Yeah.
in many instances, were enhanced by drugs.
Yeah, I stopped smoking about 3 years ago.
Do you all see what I mean with the defensiveness thing? I get so much of this.
But yeah, I was high back then. You've done several drunk streams? Yeah. Have you noticed any impairment to my reasoning when I do them? Have you? Have you? Have you noticed a correlation, perhaps, between me being drunk on stream and me dedicating 90 minutes of that stream to making jokes that I don't have a water sports kink? Like, what do you want from me? How's the Adderall shortage going? Brutal, as always. Your alcohol stream's the funniest ever.
Oh, so he's on Adderall too. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
So, dependent on Adderall, a drug.
Man, I gotta say, it really makes me feel weird when people act like taking Adderall off prescription and like being a pothead are the same thing. That really makes me feel weird. Like, am I dependent on the lithium that has no effect whatsoever on my day-to-day, like, emotional or energy state? Just because of, like, broader, like, electrochemical correction or whatever? I don't know. I don't know what the argument is being made.
And on caffeine, a drug. Also, do you need 2 stimulants coursing through your system at all times? Like, I choose what I'm going to do.
Adderall doesn't function as a stimulant for people with ADHD. There's that's the reason why. That's the reason why they prescribe it. You don't just get it via like the friend of a friend that you know. It works different. It's not just like doing caffeine or like cocaine or whatever. It's a different thing. Who said he's dependent on caffeine? I didn't say that, but he just kind of took it and ran with it, I guess. That's also not how it works. Well, it's also operating on the assumption that I'm like a hardline anti-drug user, which I'm not. Weed works different for different people as well. Vaush, you're so close. What are you talking about? Every drug will have different effects on different people. Oh, you're the being high helps with focus and helps get work done, Vaush, saying it's the same as alcohol as coke person. All right, you're also taking a month-long break. You know what? I'm not even getting into the rest of the shit that you've said over here, okay? It's for this one reason. At no point did I say weed is the same as alcohol. You imagined that. I didn't say it. You imagined it. You hallucinated it. It was a weed fervor. The marijuana ghost appeared to you and deceived you, okay? Battle your ghosts. Return stronger. Some reefer madness, perhaps? Ah, true. But you were comparing them? Comparing and saying 2 things are the same is not the same thing. Those aren't... That's not what those things mean.
On most days. I have ADHD. I take Adderall to help me with it. And I make a choice on most days. Is this a caffeine day or is this an Adderall day? Because I need one of the 2.
Yeah, being drunk is super fun. I'm a happy drunk. Always happy when I'm drunk and horny. Yes, but only when you're drunk. I don't distrust you as a person when sober because you've been drunk in the past. Dog, are we really doing this? I said habitual drug users, as in people who use them frequently. People who frequently use drugs, either because they have an addiction or because they're seeking the escapism, I have reasons to distrust both. If you don't distrust either of them, you're an idiot. It's okay to be those things while also distrusting them. For example, you could fairly say that you distrust people who are overly, like, chauvinistic as a joke. You can say that about me. That's fine. Stop pretending that there's no reason to say that with regards to drugs and reasonability, okay? Why does everyone get offended by everything that I say? You realize you could just go any other leftist online who are all pissing themselves and shitting themselves nonstop, trying not to offend their piss crybaby audience, you know?
It's true.
You know, it's funny because I kind of think of...
There's no convincing Vaush on this topic. It's like trying to convince an addict to quit their drug. Convince me of what? Why is he flipping from saying we shouldn't judge drug users to judging Vaush for drug use? Because people always do this as well. People always do the thing where, like, they assume I'm, like, fundamentally opposed to drug use, a position I've never held. I think that, like, over-dependency on drugs usually manifests in a way that it inhibits a person's trustworthiness. Like, this is... if you live in the real world, this is such an intuitive take, man. We've all known, like, even through high school or college or whatever, like, people who keep getting drunk or keep getting high, and it, like, with them and it fucks with their reliability, and everyone wants to leap forward and point out, well, I'm not that person. Who asked you? Jesus. Okay, here's a quick question. How do you think it would look if I said man, there are like a lot of guys who treat their girlfriends like shit or like abuse them or whatever. And a bunch of guys in chat leap up. They're like, wait, hold on. I don't do that to my girlfriend. Can you understand how, because this was like a big Gamergate thing as well. Can you understand how you doing that would come across as like an overly defensive aversion to understanding the point that I'm making? If I say like, man, guys, I'm not literally saying all men. Obviously not all men. There are 4 billion men. It can't be all men, but like it's a tendency, you know? So if I'm addressing a tendency and people are racing forward to go, oh, not me, like it makes me feel like you're deliberately avoiding the forest for the trees, you know? It's like I'm pointing at a forest and saying, man, this forest sure is full of squirrels. Look at that. And you point to one tree that doesn't have a squirrel. And you're like, well, not that tree. That tree doesn't have a squirrel. What do you mean? Like, come on, you know? Everyone's so insecure, man. Yeah, people, and this is mostly a weed thing again. Alcoholics are nowhere near this insecure. They'll own it, you know? Couldn't the argument be made that habitual stream watchers are as addicted to watching streams as weed users are to weed? No, because weed is a substance that alters your brain chemistry, and live streams are, I mean, technically, literally everything alters your brain chemistry to some extent, but obviously there is a quantifiable difference between the extent to which the brain chemistry is altered from using weed and you like looking at a video on a screen. Was that a joke? I don't know. Was it? How can I tell? No, it wasn't. 0% that was a joke. Because it continues, meaning they both use it to cope and as escapism. Could it not be said that as someone who needs to watch every second of every stream forgoing social obligations, responsibilities, is just as unreliable as someone who is stoned 4 to 5 hours most days? Yeah, if you are watching live streams to the point where you're forgoing social obligations, then you're obviously like definitionally untrustworthy to the people whose obligations you're forgoing. What does that have to do with what we're talking about? If I use your door, am I addicted to doors? It's rough out here.
Vaush's audience as being totally sycophantic towards him. And on some issues, they certainly are. But it's nice to see them giving him this big dose of pushback on this really bizarrely bad take.
What take?
Where not only is he a habitual drug user himself, and admittedly so.
I first of all, I never said habitual. I never said that. I did just that was not said about myself. I mean, I do drink coffee every day. That's true. Like the definition for habitual is kind of fuzzy here. I don't know if a cup of coffee a day or a cup or two is, I mean, habitual is a kind of a fuzzy term here. The recommended limit for how much caffeine you can have in a day without there being any issues is 4 cups of coffee a day. Like any more than that is an issue. And I have that, and I have the 5-hour energy. So that's like the equivalent of 2 to 3 cups of coffee a day, which never exceeds what the government would say is a problem. Is that habitual? I mean, it's consistent, that's for sure. I mean, I guess, like whatever. I mean, sure, I'll say, yeah, habitual caffeine user. Sure, whatever. I don't know. I'm addicted to having bad takes. Now that is true. Habitual is just the adjective form of habit. Yeah, well, yes, of course, but colloquially, like anything can be a habit, regardless of how much time is in between it, you know? Having a drink once every New Year's Eve is habitual if it's every year.
Well, for me, it's treatment, though. Oh, I need the treatment. Oh. Okay.
I just don't understand where this is coming from.
That makes it totally different, okay? Drugs make you unreasonable, except the drugs I do. Those are the reasonable making drugs, and they are.
Well, yes, caffeine and Adderall, as drugs go, probably trend themselves towards agreeability and cognitive, you know, cognitive stability compared to like weed or alcohol. That is true. I mean, he earlier said like not all drugs are the same, so yeah. Is he making fun of people who do prescription drugs? He's doing that classic pothead thing where it literally like any statement on drug is instantly annulled by the fact that you've had like aspirin or a cup of coffee or whatever. This is very much like a new atheist era kind of internet argument where it's like, well, you don't like me smoking pot? Mom, well, look who has to have a goddamn aspirin to keep from having a headache in the morning. You know, like it's not really like an engagement with anything. It's just like redirected teen angst. I don't know. Insulin addicts, man. True. Really runs them into debt. Pretty sad.
To be fair. But he acts like there's no purpose to any of these drugs. Purpose of alcohol, as we all know, is to get rid of some of those pesky inhibitions that hold us back.
When was this even about?
Now,
that?
For some people, that's a really bad idea. For some people, it's a pretty necessary thing. If you're drinking alcohol on a daily basis, then you have a problem. But
Okay.
I don't think that makes you untrustworthy.
People who drink every day absolutely do tend to be untrustworthy. 100%. Like if they're having a glass of wine with dinner or whatever, but like if they are getting drunk every day, yeah, that's a pretty big marker for unreliability. Yeah, I mean, that's, yeah. Like, yeah, you can't say 100%. I have never said all people, man.
I don't think to myself, a person who drinks on a daily basis is not a trustworthy person. Now, there might be certain tasks that I don't trust them with. There might be certain things I would not ask them to do because of that.
That's what untrustworthy means. If there's stuff that you would feel comfortable asking of a sober person, but a person is constantly drunk, so you don't trust them with that, that is what that is. That's what I mean. That's the whole point. Because it inhibits their ability to do stuff. Because they're drunk. Is getting high after work 4 to 5 days, 4 out of 5 work days a week a sign of untrustworthy? I'm not prophetic. I don't know. It's not an every person thing here. I don't know. Generally, though, yeah, I would lean. That would be, yeah, that would be my lean, you know?
But I don't think that there is some deep, horrible failing in their moral character at that point.
I never said that.
As a caveat to all this stuff that I'm saying, that there are certain drugs that are so powerfully habit forming and so expensive that you cannot trust the people on them because they've become addicts and they're going to do anything they can to get drugs. And if that means stealing from you, even if
this is literally a take I've had that chat gave me shit for, by the way. Vaush, would there be any situations that you wouldn't trust a habitual caffeine user? I don't know what level of caffeine addiction a person would need to be on for it to inhibit them in a way that would make them untrustworthy. Like, I guess maybe they'd get really jittery. Maybe if the jitteriness became an issue, I don't know what that would look like. I haven't experienced that. That would have to be like a very severe, like you know, I don't know how that would manifest, I guess. Maybe if they were always peeing. Yeah, they'd always be peeing, you know? Can't trust that. They pick your wallet for a Starbucks run. Yeah, I suppose. Teens steal their parents' money for weed all the time. Yeah, people want, yeah, people absolutely. Dude, people, like, there are, for those of you who haven't gotten there, once you get to university, you will make friends who will be, like, hitting you up for money so they can buy weed or whatever, or alcohol. Like, 100% that's going to happen, unless you don't make any friends, I guess. So you should strive to make some friends, probably. It's a known archetype. I think nicotine is way worse in this way than weed, at least. Yeah, of course, absolutely.
If you're their best friend, they're going to do it. So in that instance, yes, you cannot trust an addict of certain drugs. But someone who microdoses mushrooms every day, whatever, dude. Someone who takes Adderall every day, drinks caffeine every day, who gives a shit?
It's drugs and music, okay? We need to add, I don't know, man. If I learned somebody microdose shrooms every single day, it would definitely make me wonder. Add to a list of stuff that I can't bring up. Vaush, I trust weed heads, but I don't trust like alcoholics. Yeah, that's true. Alcoholics are probably less trustworthy on average than weed heads by a pretty significant margin. Vaush, why if they don't steal or act abusive when high, what's the issue? God damn it, dude. Come on. Apply some critical thinking. Can you think of any possible issues with habitual drug use? Just any, like hypothetically. Just how about we put to use?
I mean, he obviously did think of some hypotheticals because he built those into the question. He obviously did think of that. He put that in the question itself when he said, if they're not stealing,
this is fair,
and they're not whatever the other thing was, then what's the problem? So basically he said, like, accepting these behaviors that are obviously a problem, what's the problem? And Vaush is like, well, are you really so small-brained you can't even think of the issues that might come up? He did. He wants to know what besides those issues he came up with could possibly be your issue. I mean, I don't know what the purpose of doing a stream and interacting with a chat is.
Okay, we're really...
If you're going to get mad at them for just asking a question.
Leaning on
And
it.
I know who I do a show with, okay? I realize the irony of that statement coming from me.
Some of the faculties that we've developed during the stream, during the time that we've spent together, and you could think possibly, what about the habitual use of a chemical that impedes brain functioning might mean theoretically, about a person or about what they do or how they act? Just could you fill in the blanks? Do I have to explain all of it?
Yeah.
I am very grouchy here, but in fairness, I have to deal with you guys.
Yeah, please do.
You can like the most. This reminds me of that email I got where I said you shouldn't do crack in a subway, and a person emailed me being like,
He's going through an awful lot of explanation about why he's not going to explain his position any further. Is this just an instance where Vaush said something that he knows is indefensible, so now instead of...
The statement that habitual drug use impedes your reliability as a person. Again, like, God almighty. This topic, man. This subject. This indefensible, you know. Was TJ perhaps the person who got angry at me for saying you shouldn't smoke crack in the subway? The crack guy made this Reddit post a while back, by the way. Oh no, I see. This is a meme.
Picking up the gauntlet and defending it, he's just going to attack anyone who asks him to. Like, are you really so insignificantly tiny-brained that you can't fathom the plethora of issues that might arise from if someone is taking a mind-breaking substance that just destroys their reason, destroys their ability to understand anything going on around them? If they're doing that on a daily basis, non-stop, every second of every day, can you not see why that person is a problem when it comes to the issue of trust? It's like, okay, well, I guess if you lay on the hyperbole that thick, sure.
I want to debate you on how it's problematic of you to have said that you can't do crack in a subway. Crack users have rights too, and where else are they supposed to do it, you know? Vaush, you're just really weird in this topic. I've known many people who smoke and they're perfectly fine, functional people. Yeah, including you, according to you. The only reason you'd be acting this way is if you were defensive. The idea of habitual use of drugs can make a person...
Yeah, well, people get kind of defensive when you just blanket label them
You do? I don't. I do use caffeine and Adderall, and when people say habitual use of drugs can cause unreliability, I don't immediately go, not coffee and Adderall. Like, I don't feel a need to leap to the defense of, like, I go, what do you mean by drug? By drug, do you mean this Flintstones vitamin? I haven't heard of anyone doing anything wrong in a Flintstones. Fuck, man, again, because it's like, yeah, no willingness to engage in good faith with the premise, I guess. It just makes me wonder about people. I know that escapism is a pretty big deal these days because everyone's miserable and wants to die, but holy shit, I really don't think drugs are the solution to that. You ever seen that meme on Twitter where it's the e-girl and she's saying thank you for changing my life to a bunch of weed, and the weed says, you don't remember anything you did yesterday, and the e-girl says exactly, or something like that? I had like 50k likes or whatever. Shit like that makes me so mad, or not mad, sorry, it makes me sad. People will openly admit, like, yeah, the drugs help me, like, blur my way through life without having to think or reflect too much. Oh, okay, great. That's great. I'm glad. I'm glad it's doing that for you. You know? That's great. That's cool. That seems healthy. That's almost always why people abuse them, too. Yeah, but they don't want to admit it. Vaush, I'm sick of people acting like weed is so harmless. I used it habitually to deal with the stress of transitioning, and it fucked up my thought process so bad that it culminated in me spending time in the psych ward. 4 months of inpatient, outpatient. Yeah, it's pretty... There are like so... when I talk about drugs, I tend to talk about weed most, because people cope the hardest on weed. But like, there are so many negative... Like, first of all, smoking a bunch of weed costs a lot of money, obviously. And a lot of you do not have money to be spending. I see those white names. Second of all, time that you are spending high is time you're not spending improving your life, for the most part. Like, you can, but there are a lot of things you've been putting off. I bet a lot of people watching this right now have a lot of work in the house and stuff they've been trying to do, getting prepped for taxes or cleaning up around the place or fixing a thing or whatever. Like, it is so much easier to not do that stuff when you're high. Do some people get high then do that stuff? Sure, though I question why you had to get high to do that, but... Look, the idea that stoners are lazy, not exactly like a revolutionary Vaushite thought or whatever. Sorry, I'm not pulling that one from nowhere. Obviously, stoners are lazy. That is the thing being high makes you be. Man, I actually feel like one of the best speeches on marijuana use came from South Park, of all places. What was the thing the dad said? Where, like, weed doesn't really hurt you that much, but sometimes it makes you okay with not being better, and that's the hurt that it does. I thought that was an unusually good take for a libertarian-leaning show, considering how libertarians feel about weed. Because I think that's about as true as it gets, really. It's not that smoking weed will like make you go murder babies or whatever. It's just that there's a lot of like subtle things in your life that kind of blur away, and you're left with I guess a weaker position from which to improve yourself if it's something that you depend on habitually. Not if you just smoke weed once, again, because I know everyone's going to leap at this and be like, wow, you're saying that if you smoke weed once, your life is over? But it is something to be concerned with. Also, my personal experience knowing a ton of gay and queer people influences this, because I know a lot of like traumatized, like a lot of them are sexual assault victims or whatever, but they smoke a ton of weed to try to like push the feelings away or like just get through life numb, and they never deal with their problems, like ever, you know? It's like a cope thing, yeah, but like the actual definition of cope, and they never actually fix the problems. They don't like they don't do anything about it. They never like make any effort to address the underlying psychological harm. They just self-medicate, and that doesn't fix the issue. It just sort of blurs away the, you know, like it doesn't fix it. You might as well be putting concealer on a open wound. It's it doesn't work, you know? And that shit bothers me. Yes, do not put makeup on a wound. That's a bad idea. It's like if you broke your foot and just took pain meds and kept walking on it rather than getting a cast. Yeah, exactly. You can take pain meds when you break your foot, but you're supposed to take them in conjunction with a cast and other stuff that actually heals it. If you're only taking the pain meds, you never fix it, and you'll always need them because you've never set the bone proper. Or maybe it sets in the wrong position, you know? Don't want that either. Yeah, to a large extent, the radical dino. What if coping is all someone can really do? I don't believe that's the case ever. I literally never think that's actually true. That would only be the case if you were like locked in Guantanamo Bay and your your execution date is in 1 month and there's no hope of escape, and they gave you a bunch of fentanyl or whatever. Like, okay, dude, whatever. but I don't think that's the case. You know, you're wrong. No, I'm not. I will never enable any like line of thinking from the depressive f***s in my community and elsewhere where they want someone else to validate their preconceived belief that there's nothing they can do. That's incel shit. The idea that like, no, you don't understand, I really am. Bro, even if you are, delusionally believing you're not is literally better outcome-wise. You can't see the future. You have no idea what it actually holds. You never know if something's 100% or 0%. In fact, very rarely is anything actually 100 or 0%. Proceeding with the assumption that you can improve things is mathematically a superior method of improving your life to assuming that nothing can be done and you lie down and rot, you know? And that hurts. A lot of people want to take refuge in the doomerism, to think like, I've hurt so much trying to make things better, so maybe I should stop trying, at least then I won't have to struggle. But unfortunately, life is a struggle. That is the whole point of living, and that is the reason why we're alive. That's what we were born to do. That's what we're going to die doing. There's no escaping it really, except through death. But if you don't want to die, and none of you actually want to die, by the way, everyone who attempts suicide immediately afterwards, they're like, no, wait, like you jump off the bridge and you're 2 feet off the plane you just jumped from, and everyone's like, no, like you biochemically, you don't want to die, okay? Unless you're like terminally ill in your 50s, you know, that's probably not the direction you want to go in. Do you have any idea how unreliable brain chemistry is? I bet you a significant portion of the people in chat right now have at some point in their life thought that they wanted to die because they looked at the floor of their bedroom and it was messy. Do you have any idea how bad our brains are at sorting out thoughts? You've thought that. I know you. You have. You've looked at some easily solvable problem and thought, I wish I was just dead. No, you don't. But if you smoked weed right then, you would be able to find the hidden third option, not solve the problem, and not deal with the suicidal ideation. Congratulations, you know? Weed has given you the opportunity to do something that you otherwise couldn't do, cope and avoid. So that's why I don't like it, you know? You'd feel a lot better if you just did your damn homework, cleaned up the floor, fix up your house, make your room, make your bed. Video games can do this too? Yes, they can. I do think there's something fundamentally different about the way weed or whatever other chemical alters your brain state. But yeah, any form of coping or escapism can potentially do this. That being said, and hey, remember what I've said about slop games? Weed definitionally numbs. That is the thing it does. That's why it gets prescribed for pain management. It does that. Video games don't necessarily numb. Some do. slop games, gotcha games, whatever else, you know? They just like time just fades away. You don't do anything especially interesting, but it holds your attention. A lot of good video games don't do that, you know? Lots of good video games that don't do that at all. So that's one of the reasons I go on about that too. Numbing mechanisms, you know? As much of your life as possible should be spent not numb. You know, you as a living thing, your whole body and brain are instruments sensitively tuned to life. You know, you should spend your life that way, even if it's painful sometimes. Being a sensitive instrument is sometimes painful. That is what it means. But that is also all it means. That's all of life. That's the entirety of life that we get. Sensitivity to things that happen to us. You know, you can numb all of it, good or bad, and fix nothing. Or you can deal with it. Sorry, I'm getting self-righteous at this point. You know, not to say I don't have my own issues with these problems, but you know, that's why. That's why I get up on this. You know, is gooning allowed? Yeah, sure, gooning is allowed. I think this is also one of the reasons why I find weed a lot more depressing to think about than alcohol. Certainly, there are lots of people who are alcoholics and they just drink a lot and they just numb it through alcohol and blah blah. That is certainly a thing that happens. But in my personal experience, my day-to-day, I have known very few people who have numbed pain with alcohol. Usually, they've just gotten loud and annoying at parties. Now, this is entirely a personal experience thing. Again, this is not like a broader ruling on the drug itself. But I've also known a lot of people who have just done the whole like numb the pain bullshit with weed. So the feeling that I get from it is that there are a lot of people who do that without even really knowing about it, you know? How many opportunities do you miss by being high all the time? Like how many like friends could you have made or things you could have improved in your house or in your life or whatever? You know, it's like that with a lot of things. Like, oh, you spent all that time playing video games. What else could you have done? Sure. So don't spend your entire life playing video games, right? You know, do other things as well. I've made plenty of friends through smoking. I'll just ban. This is a heartfelt rant. Okay, you have to think. You have to think. When I say how many friends could you have made or things could you have done through not doing this thing, you have to think in your head. Is he saying that it's impossible to make friends while high, or possibly, maybe, if I could not be a retard for a moment, could I think that he's maybe making the point that there are life opportunities that pass you by if you spend your life in a deliberately numbed state? It says, please, just, oh my God, that shit really bothers me.
Trustworthy for some superficial reason. You'd be like, man, anyone who's ever had a keloid, don't trust them.
True, I guess. Sure. Well, I'm like, yeah, I think alcoholics are untrustworthy, and he's like, people who wear glasses are untrustworthy. That is true, though. Pol Pot understood this.
You know, like if someone was out there earnestly saying that, you can't trust someone with ADHD, can't trust someone on Adderall, can't trust someone who drinks caffeine. Like, you're not going to be offended by that if someone says that? I think you probably would be.
And untrustworthy. The idea that this is even remotely
I feel like even an attempt to respond to points this bad would kind of like lower, it would lessen me. I mean, he's just arguing against strawmen. I don't even know what points he's making.
Controversial to you is demonstrative of a problem in your brain, okay? Are you high now? Like, seriously, come on. Jesus Christ. Like, you realize that you...
Also, people with ADHD literally are less trustworthy. People with ADHD have executive dysfunction, usually. Like, difficulty doing the things they want to do. Like, that is a part of it. That's what the Adderall's for. That's what the medicine prescription is for.
Sound right? Like, this is like the, well, I knew an aunt who smoked for 30 years and never got lung cancer.
Untrustworthy has the bad association with being duplicitous. A lot of alcoholics are duplicitous. Being cognitively impaired through alcohol or through weed can make you, in some ways, a worse person. Everyone thinks that being weed is just, yo, you're being chill and nice or whatever. Like, if you're impeding your brain functionality, you're impeding the systems in your brain that help you understand social cues, and like ethical decision making. That's the brain. That's where those come from, in the brain. Did I miss where Vaush doesn't drink? I do drink. I mean, occasionally. Do you mean untrustworthy or do you mean unreliable? Both? To an extent. I think they were referring to ADHD, which doesn't make you more duplicitous. It just makes you less reliable. Sure. Vaush, your threshold for untrustworthiness is too low is the problem. Just smoking isn't an indicator of untrustworthiness, even if it's daily. Oh my God. I can't. Still, even after an hour of this, more than an hour of this, still like the semantic wheedling in chat from people who are like, well, hold on. You don't mean I'm bad. You mean like other things are bad. Please, come on. This will never end. It'll literally never end. Yeah, if a person smokes weed every single day, it would impede my view of their trustworthiness. Yes, I do believe that. Yes, that would affect my perception of their trustworthiness. But what about me? I'm perfect. I'm sure you are. Finish my sentence, you asshole. You're not paying me. Wait, do you have an orange name? You're not paying me. I have a friend who drinks all the time, and he's like, what argument are you making? What are you even saying? What are you saying to me right now? What words are you using? Is this English? Are you using English right now? Is this a different language? Is this Portuguese, the fake version of Spanish? What are you saying? There's always going to be someone in chat who's going to...
I think Vaush needs to get more of a curl in his mustache right there. When in lieu of an argument, he just starts belittling and berating his audience. I think he should start being like, are you a child? Are you an imbecile? Is that what's going on here? Because only an imbecile would say the thing that you have just said to me, sir. Twist up the... He needs that.
Interpret whatever you say as a personal attack no matter what because it happens to hit their particular anxiety. Yeah, that's always it. It's always people who can't... It's a sign of low self-esteem because I can disagree with people, but when people, like when I watch live streamers and they say some shit I disagree with, I never think I'm being attacked. I never think that, even if it's my shit. And like I deal with that a lot too because I have plenty of extremely strong interests and disinterests. So it's not as though I'm not easy to like be disagreeable towards, at least by my definition.
Okay, so according to Vaush, he would not be offended. So I take back what I said. I take him at his word. I don't think he... So I retract that particular piece of the argument.
But I never interpret it as a personal attack. But a lot of people get really upset because they're like, oh no, you know? Like,
I mean, whether it is interpreted as a personal attack or not, it just doesn't make sense. Setting any potentially offended feelings aside, the argument doesn't hold up for reasons I've already outlined. I think.
Okay. I wish TJ at some point there had been like, I wonder if when Vaush says habitual drug use, he's referring to like weed and alcohol and meth and fentanyl and blah 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 blah, and that he doesn't mean that if you ever once microdosed, that means like you're forever untrustworthy. I don't know. No engagement. How do you feel about someone having to deal with weed and nicotine addiction? What is that? I don't know what you mean. Having to deal with addiction? Do you mean you just smoke weed? I don't know what you mean by that. Surprise, Vaush, your community has a lot of low self-esteem. Potheads have a lot of low self-esteem, presumably shadowboxing the echoes of their parents and their disapproving stares. They caught them smoking weed in the back porch when they arrived back from work early. Take my slippers off. Are cigarette smokers less trustworthy? Here's a question. Why do you care? What do you think the 78th qualification for me is going to in any way like further sculpt out the sculpture we're making? You know, that we're building a point here. Obviously, cigarettes don't affect your brain chemistry anywhere near as much, but nicotine addiction gets you. You really not heard at all about like people who smoke and they like keep hitting other people up for smokes. They turn everything around them to sticky, grimy, yellow, you know, like disgusting smoker tinted. That people steal money for cigarettes all the time. That's not like a new thing or whatever. Yeah, that yes, addictions are a liability on your brain. Any dependency, any addiction will be a liability on your brain. And you know what? If it wasn't for the fact that I'm well off and this just isn't really like an issue that could manifest, if I was incapable of making the money to get my Adderall and you were around me and I had to choose between like hitting you up for money or taking it and like going unmedicated, yeah, you should trust me less, 100%. That's what addictions and dependencies or anything, frankly, that affects your brain chemistry does. That's the whole point. You know, this is one of the reasons why drug policy and the way we treat like drug use in a criminal justice sense are so important to fiddle around with and get right. A lot of people treat it like it's a personal failing or like a moral crime or whatever. But when you realize that in a lot of cases, it can be framed much more readily and helpfully as a medical issue, all of a sudden, all these stupid points about how like, well, actually all drugs, dependency doesn't matter. What do you mean? How can you hold those positions simultaneously? How can you simultaneously believe that addiction is a disease, but then also think that habitual use of a chemical substance that you're reliant on isn't harmful to you and doesn't affect your trustworthiness? Why then do so many drug addicts end up on the streets? I know a lot of them get high after ending up in the streets, but it definitely goes both ways there. Like, why then are there so many stories of people like falling into addiction and stealing from their friends and family? Like, it's not new and it's not crazy. I just feel like a lot of you are just insecure because you smoke pot from time to time and you're getting mad at me because you think I'm attacking you. I'm not. I don't care. I don't care. Smoke whatever. I don't care. I'm not your friend. I don't give a shit. I don't give a okay? I hope you smoke so much weed that it convinces you that it's a good idea to donate to me, in spite of the fact that argue with me through donos. That's what I want. Okay. I'm sick of it. I don't know what you people want from me. I don't know. I can't say anything. I'm bound here, you know? Last time I drank, I get gifted 25 subs. That's why I like alcohol more. Yeah. It's a demographic thing, Superjet guy. Also, you know, gonna go like straight to the heart of at least 20 people watching, but a lot of early transition trans girls are heavy weed addicts because they a cultural osmosis, and B, because there are a lot of negative social, physiological, and psychological elements of early transition that they want to blur and numb as hard as possible. Of course, all the weed really does is convince them that they'll be happier if they put off voice training for a bit longer, so they get mad at me for bringing it up. Really, it's their fault. Do the voice training. Go buy new clothes. You know, stop coping. Jesus Christ. Women, am I right? Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, that's for me. I know it's you. I know it's all of you. Thank you. I know. I've got my hands wrapped around the goddamn pulse of this community, and I know what you stupid fucks are smoking weed for. It's not for pure reasons like me, with my cheese and refried bean quesadillas. No, it's so you can forget about all the things that'll make you anxious as soon as you're sober again. But I'm not going to let you, all right? This is the new Vaush stream feature, okay? Every 30 minutes, a gigantic flashing sign, do your voice training, will interrupt whatever I'm saying and flash on the screen with a big bell noise. Like that. You'll never be safe. You'll never run. Actually a good idea. Yeah. It's okay, Renewal. Voice training is insane. It's fine. Like most skills, people are bad at it and stay bad at it because they're too insecure to deal with the fact that they're bad at it, you know? It's like drawing. It's like there are people who have been idly doodling their entire life who have never improved because they've never put the effort in. When it comes to like the voice training stuff though, it's more about the overwhelming insecurity of having to think about your voice. To which I say, that's tough. It's you're alone in your own room, you know. Past a point, you just have to get the work done, okay? Yeah, I mean, if you don't want a voice train, that's fine. It's your, but you know, I think a lot of you do. Just put it off.